going to get to Chris now. Chris is a tender-hearted man. I know a lot of people got on Chris when he was talking about that he needed a submissive woman because he wants to be in control. I'm going to give Chris kudos to this. Chris knows who he is. Chris knows who he is. At least Chris is telling people up front, listen, I can't deal with no Jessicas of the world. Because what he's saying is that he's tenderhearted. He can't, not only does he not want to fight with a Jessica, what he's also telling us, and what I saw with a Jessica, is he really doesn't have it on the inside of him to do it. Jessica would run all over Chris emotionally. She would tear him down to the ground. And maybe before Chris was with a woman like that. I know I said I thought it was his mama. Everybody told me I was wrong. It's not his mama. I think even Chris said he doesn't think it's his mama. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. And I'm not so sure that if it wasn't his mama to Chris, I'm not so sure if Chris didn't witness it with his mama to other people. Just as bad. It's just as bad. Chris has seen it. Chris has seen it before. Chris has seen women running over men. And what he knows on the inside of him is he can't be that man. He can't be that man that gets run over by women because he's seen it. So whether or not he wants to tell me, no, it wasn't my mother who did it to me, but that sister of his, and when they were on that Dear Wifey show, they told me that mama was one tough cookie. And if the mama didn't do it to Chris, he saw his mama do it to other people. And what he saw was, I don't want that. I don't want that. And so, Chris, my advice to you is to stop denying you haven't seen it, because you've seen it. Stop denying that you haven't been a part of it, because you've been a part of it. It's okay. It's okay for us to still love our mothers, but still see things in our mothers that we wouldn't want in a mate. It's okay. I'm a daddy's girl. I love my daddy. Every bit of my daddy I loved. But there are some things I could see in my daddy that I probably wouldn't want in a mate, in my husband. And that's okay. It doesn't lessen my love for my father. It doesn't make my father any great of a father, right? Because when we are young, we see our mothers and fathers as mommy and daddy. But as we get older, we can see our mothers and fathers as people in relationships, right? And I can see some of the things on how I wouldn't want some of the things in my father to be in my husband. But that doesn't mean my father wasn't a great father. My father loved me, but he's human. He makes mistakes, and we all have flaws. And what I see in Chris is Chris worships his mother. But I think his mother's got some flaws. I really do. And I think that maybe by him not admitting those flaws of his mother is making him date differently. Because remember, Chris doesn't want to criticize anybody. Chris doesn't want to talk bad about anybody. Chris would rather lie in your face than to admit what he really thinks about you. That's what this whole combative thing came around. First of all, I do want to clear that up. What I think about that is in that room, that deliberation room, Chris did not call Jessica combative in that moment. He did say it was a combative moment. That other clip that they showed when he has the blue suit on and he's saying Jessica's combative, that clip, as we all know, those little outtakes or whatever you want to do, they happen well after the actual moment. So in that moment that day, the deliberation, when they were going to let someone go, he actually didn't say she was combative. He did say there was a combative moment. Later on, what those producers did, I'm pretty sure what those producers did was they called Chris back in and say, hey, we need a little bit, whatever you call these outtakes. We need you to say it again and call Jessica combative. And Chris did it. He called her combative. And then when they went to that date where he's getting eliminated and he's still saying, I didn't call you combative. But he says, but if you really want to know the truth, yeah, I think it. See, that's what really was. Chris always thought Jessica was combative. He really did. On the inside, he really did believe it. But when he was in the deliberation room, he didn't want to say it because Chris doesn't like to talk bad about people. And so in the deliberation room, he toned it down and he said there are some combative moments. But on the inside, did Chris think Jessica was combative? Yeah, he thought it. But he didn't say it. He didn't say it because like I tell you, Chris he doesn't want to talk bad. But in the end, the producers got him anyway. Because like I said, we know who the producers were working for this season. We know who had things on the producers. Because I'm quite sure, like I told you earlier, that there was some extra paper signed for Jessica and Janelle, who are business owners, who have a brand out here, who do not want their name and their brand sullied out here in the street. And I'm quite sure Jessica had her PR person or her attorneys draw up some extra language, some extra paragraphs for the Ready to Love producers to sign. And they knew we better not go too hard on Jessica and Janelle because we signed probably like a non-disparaging act. I don't know what it's called. Where are the attorneys out here? Y'all tell me. But I already know that everybody else was going to get picked on and Jessica and Janelle were going to get off scot-free. And that's what happened. So that's going to be my advice to Chris. That Chris, get in touch with your real emotions for your mama. Because once you realize that you can still love your mother, honor her and worship her, but you can still acknowledge that there were some parts of her that you do not want in your own wife. I think that when you're seeking your wife, you'll have a little bit of a different approach. And then what will happen is when you approach that woman, you're seeking that woman, it won't come off the way it's coming now. Because some people think you're trying to control the woman, but really, Chris, what I understand in you is you're not really trying to control the woman. You know what you're trying to control, Chris? You're trying to control the situations. That's what you're trying to control. You're trying to control situations. You're trying to control not having the type of situations you have with Jessica. And a lot of people look at that as you're trying to control the woman. But I don't think Chris wants to control women. I think he wants to control situations because he doesn't want to be in them. And that takes two different approaches. But that's going to be my advice for Chris. Habibi, you got some growing up to do, Habibi. You got some growing up to do, Habibi. You also might need some therapy. And I'm going to say almost you do. You need some therapy, Habibi. You have an impulse controlling you that's not right. It doesn't go well out here in society. You need to learn how to control your tongue. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Habibi, but Habibi needs some help. Habibi needs some help in navigating his life. He absolutely does. And he's going to need to go find some place to get him that life. He's going to need an outlet for all this creativity he has. I think Habibi has some parts of him that are really sharp, but Habibi doesn't know how to connect and put everything together. And it's almost like this big spark. It's like haywire. It's haywire. A lot of stuff is going on. A lot of things are going on in Habibi's head at once. And when you see him, it just looks like an electric board circuit sparking everywhere. And you're like, what the hell is going on here? And you're trying to make sense of it, but you can't make sense of it. And it's a big job for any woman in a relationship. I don't know if any woman can handle Habibi. Habibi is a handful. He's going to have to learn how to get this under control so someone else can handle him. How in the heck could I miss the wannabe comedian, Mr. Phil? Phil. How could I even think about ending this video recap and not talk about Phil, another person who doesn't see himself? Another person who doesn't see himself, and all he does is he goes out in the world and says, I don't quite understand why people don't see me the way I see myself. Listen, Phil, it comes a point in time where it doesn't matter the way you see yourself. You could see yourself stable all day long. You could see yourself as a man that changes jobs every 2 years, every 3 years, stable. You could see yourself as a man that just because he's come on a show like this, all of a sudden the comedian is awakened inside of him, and now he wants to tour the world and become a comedian. And then when a woman tells him, that's fine, that's what you want to do, it's just not what I want for my life, you all dumbfounded and you can't understand it. That's another person who looks at people out in the world and says, I want you, but gives no consideration to whether or not that person would want them. No consideration. Phil gives no consideration to what type of woman would want to be with him. Maybe when he sits back and asks himself, what type of woman would want the life that I'm offering, he'll find that woman. Because there is a woman that wants the life that Phil is offering. There is a woman. There's a woman that wants the life that Phil is offering. The problem he ran into was he was trying to sell it to a woman who didn't want it. 101 of salesmanship is you have to sell the product to a person who wants it. If the person doesn't want the product, it doesn't matter the price of the product, they'll never buy it. If I don't want something, I don't care how cheap it is. I ain't buying it. I don't want it. I don't even want it for free. You know how many times people try to say, here, take this, it's free. No, I don't want it. I don't even want it for free. I don't even want it cluttering up my life, my house, my whatever thing they're trying to give me for free. If I don't want the item, it being free means nothing to me. In fact, it's more work in my life. And what Phil was doing to Aries all episode long was trying to give her something for free. Saying, listen, I want to give myself to you so much, Aries. I'm going to give you me for free. And Aries says, no, thank you. I don't want it. And what Phil was saying was, I don't understand why you don't want me for free. I have value. I'm not poor. I'm not broke. I do have value. Why don't you want me? Because that's not the point, Phil. The point isn't that you have value. Yes, you do have value, but you don't have value to Aries. And once again, here's another person evaluating their value based on their own perception of themselves and not what is their value to that other person. What is their value to that other person? And what Phil doesn't do is Phil doesn't see his shortcomings. He doesn't see what things are unattractive about himself. He needs to take a deeper dive. He needs to take a deeper dive. And like I said, a lot of people out there, he needs a mirror in front of him. He needs a mirror. He needs somebody to come along and stop telling him, man, I know you got a good job. Man, I know you got this. I know you got that. Nah. He needs a friend that's going to come along and say, yeah, man, you do have all those things. But I could also understand how some women could be turned off by these other aspects of your life. These fluctuations in your life. Women want stability. They don't want every 2 years you come on a show like this and now you want a whole nother career. Dang, what's that's going to do to our life? All this instability. Think about somebody else other than yourself, Phil. Think about somebody else other than yourself. And when it comes to thinking about somebody else, I'm going to go to Sloth Herbert because he's another person who's going to struggle in this area. I'm okay with you, Herbert, being slow and a sloth, taking a long time to warm up, wanting to date women 3 and 4 years before you might be ready for marriage. That's fine. Then you need to date women who got a whole lot of time. Stop dating women who are in their early 30s, who are ready to close deals and get married and have kids. Stop wasting their time. Stop leading them on. Stop making them think that there could be a possibility. When you start dating women, Herbert, you need to tell them the truth. You need to tell them that I'm slow and that more than likely I'm not going to come to no decision on marriage until about 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is. Be truthful with them, Herbert. Don't go in with these women saying, oh yeah, I could get married, knowing who you are and knowing that you don't pull the trigger that fast and waste these women's time. Don't do it. It's nothing wrong with you being slow, Herbert. It's nothing wrong with you taking a long time to make decisions. But be truthful to these women. Be truthful to them. Don't waste their time. It's unfair to them, Herbert. It's unfair. You don't have to feel hurried. You don't have to feel rushed. You don't have to feel any of those things. But don't lie to the women. Don't lie to the women. Because when you lie to them, then guess what? I call you a time waster. I call you a time waster. But if you're honest with them, then it's not a time waster. You told them the truth. Stop dating these young 30-year-old women and be honest with yourself. I know you don't think you're a time waster. I know you don't think you're one, but you are. I know you don't think you're a time waster, but you are. I know you probably think it's not my intention to waste women's time, but it's the result. I'm not talking about what your intentions are. I'm talking about the result. Your intentions may not be to waste someone's time, but when you enter relationships and you're slow to make decisions and you need a lot of time, then that's the result. It may not be the intentions, but it's the result.